Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Public Procurement of Innovation. My name is Raluca Toma. I'm the Communication Manager of the Policy Learning Platform, and I will be your host in the upcoming an hour and a half. But before we start with the actual content, there are three things that you should know. What is this webinar about? Then who are the people behind it? And some technical details for a smooth participation. So what is this webinar about? Public procurement. Public procurement offers enormous potential market for innovative products and services. If it is used strategically, it can help governments boost innovation. So we will focus today on public procurement as a policy tool. Who are the people behind this webinar? This webinar is produced by the Policy Learning Platform, and it was carefully designed for you by our thematic experts, Arnault Morisson and Marc Pattinson. Maybe we can already see them. I will ask Arnault and Marc to turn on their cameras and microphone. Hello, Arnault. Hello, Marc.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Morning, Raluca.
Good morning.
Then we will have the pleasure of having with us three guest speakers. We will hear from Diego. Diego is joining us from Spain. Hello, Diego. Can you maybe join us so that people can already meet you?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Good morning. Hello, everybody.
And then we have two representatives coming from Interreg Europe projects. Mantas is joining us from Lithuania. Hello, Mantas.
Hello to everyone from cloudy Vilnius.
Hello, and last but not least, we also have with us Iñaki from the Basque country. Can you please also turn on your microphone and camera?
Yeah, good morning. How are you doing? From a nice weather today. Yeah, hi.
Hello, Iñaki. So you can already see in front of you all the people that you will have the pleasure of knowing and hearing from throughout this webinar. I will now ask everybody to turn on their microphone and camera, and I will continue with my introduction. This webinar is produced and brought to you by our web expert, Lotte. So she is behind the scenes today, and she will also respond to any type of technical difficulties you might have. So don't hesitate to use the chat in that sense. And of course, a very important person in this webinar, it's you, the audience. We had more than 150 people that have registered for this webinar, and we are very happy to have you with us today. I suppose some of you come from the Interreg Europe project, but we also have a lot of people that are beyond this community. So we are again very happy, very glad to see that this subject is very interesting to you. You probably have in common, apart from the fact that you are interested in the topic of today's webinar, the fact that you are working on improving regional policies. If this is the case, I want to reassure you, you are in the right place because this is the purpose of the Policy Learning Platform. We want to put forward a place for continuous learning dedicated to people like you that work on regional policies and to help you better do your job for the future. In order to do that, we propose several activities from which you can choose according to your wishes and needs. You are all part already of this community of policymakers around Europe that are working again on improving regional policies. We propose from time to time rather regularly webinars like this one and also online discussions upon demand. We have a team of thematic experts that is there to assist you, guide you, and also create links among all the different community members and their needs. We also organized international events and thematic workshops. Unfortunately, due to the current situation, we had to put in brackets this activity, but we hope to resume it quite soon. And last but not least, we also have a lot of resources that are available for you one click away on our website. You can consult policy briefs, articles, and last but not least, we have a good practices database with policy solutions coming from all over Europe, so don't hesitate to have a look at all that. Okay. Now I reach the end of my short introduction with some technical details for today. This webinar is recorded and it will be made available online tomorrow. all of you will receive tomorrow an email with the link to the recording. We will also put there some key learnings from today's discussion, and you will equally have access to all the presentations. Last but not least, we want this webinar to be as interactive as possible. We are here to engage in a discussion with you, so don't hesitate to use the chat to put forward any type of questions you might have or remarks. So here is how everything will go. You will soon hear from Arnault Morisson, our thematic expert. He will make an introduction to the topic of public procurement for innovation, after which we will have 3 short presentations from the speakers that you just saw. So we will hear from Diego, Mantas, and Iñaki. They each will have 10 minutes for their presentations, and afterwards they are there to engage in a discussion with you. We will end with a panel discussion with everybody that will be moderated by Marc Pattinson, our other thematic expert. So with no further details, I will leave the floor to Arnault that we can already see on screen. So the floor is yours, Arnault.
Well, thank you very much, Raluca, for this introduction. My introduction is going to be very short as well. We're going to look at some definition of public procurement of innovation, look at what the policy learning platform can do to help you, and looking at Interreg Europe project dealing with the topic of public procurement of innovation. So first, a definition. So what is public procurement of innovation? So it's a demand-side approach to develop new products or service with the objective to stimulate innovation. So really it's about like providing new innovation in the market and stimulate innovation. And the European Commission has published a very comprehensive guidance note on public procurement that you can find in the handout. And the way they refers as innovation procurement is either like buying the process of innovation, so new research and innovation services or products with partial outcomes. So it's about moving along the technology readiness level, or it's about clearly buying the outcome of innovation. So public procurement requires very specific skills for public buyers. So they need to develop specific skills either through internal training, having some specific people working in public procurement, having experts or consultants. So they need to have specific skills, for instance, like knowledge. They need to develop knowledge on market, on stakeholder engagement, on products and services. They need to have like basic skills, of course, for negotiation, legal framework or contract management. And they also need to develop very specific innovation skills, looking at risk assessment or intellectual property rights. But before going further, Marc, we have a very short poll for you, for the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Arnaud. So you should see on your screen soon a question relating to this public procurement dimension. Very simple question. Does your region engage in public procurement of innovation? So you have 4 choices. So you can start clicking yes. Second, we are planning to do it. No, I don't know. So we'll soon see the results if you start clicking on there, and then we can just share that quickly before Arnaud continues with his presentation. So results are coming in. More than half already have it. So hopefully you will use this webinar to sort of improve your skills, and particularly interested in the 22% who are planning to do so, because we might be able to give you some content, some details, some tips for making sure you do it. I won't say right, but do it in a way that learns from other practices that you will hear about today. So We'll ask another few questions of polls during today's presentation to make it as interactive as possible. But back to you now, Arnault.
Yeah, thank you, Marc. So the policy learning platform can help you, as Raluca mentioned. Concerning the public procurement, we have plenty of good practices that you can visit on the good practice database to get inspired on new public procurement approaches. We published a story on pre-commercial procurement. We also published a very nice policy brief on university industry collaboration and looking at how public procurement can help doing these linkages between university and industry. We encourage you to subscribe to the policy digest to have the latest news. The latest policy digest was on public procurement, and we also have this. We offer this service of peer reviews, and we encourage you to submit an application. Why not on public procurement of innovation? Can be very interesting. Also, the policy learning platform will organize a webinar 25th of June on the topic of green public procurement. So we encourage you to register to this webinar. It's going to be really really interesting, and it's going to help you know more about how public procurement can favor the development of sustainable goods and services. Also, the Inter-Europe projects, they are dealing already with public procurement of innovation. They are dealing, experimenting with new approaches. They have plenty of good practices published. For instance, there is this project, Inter-Europe project HiBuy, completely dedicated to developing and delivering better policies regarding public procurement. And I think Mantas will tell us a little bit about this Inter-Europe project. We have the project Titan. They have good practices on public procurement in the health sectors, and Iñaki is going to tell us a little bit about that. Also looking at InnoTrans, looking at sustainable transportation, procuring for e-buses, for instance, or the Inter-Europe project Manumix, looking at public procurement to promote innovation in SMEs. Well, that's all for me. Back to you, Raluca. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arnaud, for this introduction to the subject. It's time for us now to go to our first guest speaker for today. I will ask Diego to turn on his microphone and camera while I properly introduce him. So, Diego will present us a little bit the subject of how to incorporate public procurement of innovation in regional S3. Diego is a co-founder and an executive partner at Science and Innovation Link office. And I will now give the floor to you, Diego, for your presentation. You can go ahead, please. We can see your screen currently. Okay. We can see your presentation.
Good. Now you should see it properly. So thank you so much, Raluca. Thank you, Arnaud. Thank you to all the Interreg Europe policy learning platform for inviting me today. It is a pleasure to be here with you. Welcome and also good morning to all the participants throughout Europe. It is, as I said, my pleasure to be here with you to share some very briefly a few insights and lessons learned on how to incorporate innovation procurement or PPI in regional S3s. I will try to keep it very short and simple, and I have prepared a very visual and easy to navigate presentation so we can focus later on the questions that you may have and on the subsequent discussion. So I will try to start first with what I believe are the three advantages of innovation procurement as a tool to achieve the S3 objectives. Well, first, this is very important, innovation procurement allows the government to become an active player in the innovation process, meaning that while on the innovation supply side measure quite normally, government is open to companies, to universities and different actors to promote their own projects and set their innovation agendas and so on. In this case, government is setting the challenges and the areas in which this public innovation will take place. And so this means that the government is very much owns the capacity to steer the process and to set the innovation agenda. So it makes it very easy to be consistent with what is the selected pattern of specialization. So this is the first very important advantage. The second one is that the innovation procurement can simultaneously achieve several policy objectives. Let's consider healthcare, and Iñaki will share with you his experience in an inter-project. Well, you may be focusing on innovation procurement project in the healthcare sector, and you will be at the same time improving the services, so improving the healthcare, how the regional government is providing healthcare on the one hand, and on the other, it's also giving an opportunity for entrepreneurs, SMEs, whatever, to providers to work together with the healthcare service or the regional ministry in achieving this or making reality this project. So you will be simultaneously achieving two policy objectives in this case, the healthcare improvement and innovation promotion. So this is also a way to gather and to put together new resources for innovation. Let's say in this case, the healthcare funding. And then it's also important to bear in mind that innovation procurement has complementarities with other policy tools. So it is, I will highlight this point, it's a complex process, it takes time, there are multiple players, let's say, co-owning this policy, but that also gives us the chance to put together different policy tools, training, let's say, incubation processes. So you can, for example, try to promote simultaneously incubation in a specific sector, let's say again, healthcare, while at the same time you are opening public tenders in, let's say, medical devices or drug discovery, or improving the hospital management and organization. So to some extent, you are providing, while supporting an incubation process in the healthcare sector, you are providing these companies with the opportunity to bid for these tenders. So you can manage different at the same time different policy tools. So it's a process which is more complex than the supply side measures, but also gives you the opportunity to achieve different policy objectives, as I said. Then, from my point of view, these are the foundation blocks for a successful PPI policy implementation. You have to start with a shared vision, then on top of that, build the political leadership. Then you have to consider if you need further regulation at the regional level to what you have at the national or the European level, then planning and execution of the policy. So there is no single, let's say, of course, sorry, I believe, yeah. So there is no single path to success, but for sure you have to let's say, to climb this mountain, or to follow these 5 steps in the stair. So what I've tried to do in the next slide is to put together, let's say, these foundation blocks in the case of PPI and in the case of the smart specialization strategy, right? So you see that in both cases you need to create a shared vision among different actors and players. Then you need political leadership and commitment. And that's very important because, as I said, while in the innovation supply measures, what you normally have is an innovation regional agency under the stated rules providing incentives, let's say innovation vouchers or programs to promote collaboration between university, academia, and companies. So that's quite, let's say, simple. We've been doing that for decades. We know how it works. we have a single agent, which is an innovation agency providing incentives to companies. In this case, you have to take into account that at least you need 3 different players. Let's go back to the healthcare example. You need the innovation agency, which is normally providing funds or support or let's say other systemic measures to make it work. You have the healthcare regional ministry, which will be in charge, or agency will be in charge of performing the actual procurement process. And then you have the guys in charge of the procurement policy in the region, which will be, let's say, keeping an eye on you and making sure that the whole process is performed as it should. So you do need to have the 3 players on the ground working together and cooperating. So the case for leadership, which is always the case in regional innovation policies, it is stronger in the case of innovation procurement, because you need 3 different departments or agencies working together since the very beginning, right? Then in the case of regulation, well, as I said, we do have the European directives that has been transposed to the different member states. So we do have, let's say, the legal framework ready for innovation procurement. But what we normally see is that different regions normally tend to develop their own policy tools, their own guides, their own regulations, for example, stating that the innovation agency has a number of roles to play in the innovation procurement projects. So this is further regulation at the regional level that may make easier the process. So once you have that, you still have to go through the planning, programming, setting the policy tools, and then of course implementation of the strategy. So as you see, let's say the process of delivering, of putting in place this innovation procurement process goes very well hand in hand with the designing of a new smart specialization strategy. Then what about planning? What about sectors? How to prioritize? Well, we are very frequently asked in Silo when we work together with different public clients. We normally get this question: which sector should I start with? How to prioritize? Well, what we normally say is, well, let's try to focus on those sectors that you have, of course, prioritized on your S3. Try to focus on those sectors in which you do have procurement power, because let's say in the case of Spain, regions, they do have a lot of procurement power and a lot of authority, for example, in healthcare and education policies. So we say, well, if you do have budget and you do have procurement power, if you have regional ministries which own these policies, we do have the capacity to set up big projects. Let's try to focus on those sectors in you do have procurement power. But on the other hand, bear in mind that you should focus also in sectors in which you do have technology offer, because as you know, while on the state aid rules framework, you may launch a program which is targeting only the SMEs or the entrepreneurs or the companies of your region. Under the procurement framework, you have to be open not only to your country, but to the whole single market in Europe. So it is legal, and it is somehow something that we should also encourage, that a company from one country is bidding for innovation procurement process which is launched in a different country in your region. So we say, okay, that's legal, that's something that should happen more and more because we are big in the single market. But if you are approaching innovation procurement as an innovation policy tool, you should focus on those sectors in which you do have a technology offer ready in your region, so you can open new possibilities and new opportunities for your companies. They will have to compete, they will have to bid, but at least they will have the opportunity to submit their proposals and their bids tenders which are focusing in areas in which they do have capacity. So those would be like our three suggestions. But what we always say is be pragmatic. I mean, besides all these three, let's say, recommendations, focus on those sectors in which you do have a PPI champion, in which you do have an innovation, sorry, a procurement agency or department who is willing to take part in innovation procurement. This is, as I say, complex. It takes time, so you really need commitment. So if you have an officer, a politician who is ready to take the lead and to do what it takes to go through the whole process of innovation procurement, focus on that department, on that agency, and go through it and support this agency to perform the innovation procurement. And finally, this is my last slide. How to, which will be my final set of recommendations or lessons learned. Well, try to always try to answer this question: PPP for what? Are you an innovation agency? Do you want to focus on entrepreneurs? Do you want to focus on SMEs? Then try to develop your innovation procurement following that objective. Are you a healthcare regional ministry who is willing to engage in innovation procurement? Well, then maybe your goal is to improve your service. Then you should take a different approach. Try to keep in mind that PPI is complex, so a clear governance, as I said, has to be set up. You need at least an innovation agency to promote funds and support. You need a procurement authority, and you need these major procurements taking place. So you need to put all those guys together, and also consider that PPI takes time. So try to manage expectations among companies. Consider that, at least on our experience, you need at least 1.5 years since you first start designing your PPI policy until you finally are able to launch your first PPI tender. So you should be cautious, and you should be able to manage the expectations, especially among eventual companies or would-be providers of these projects, because it will take time for you to set up the incentives, the program, the market consultations, and finally writing the tenders and being able to launch this tender. So it takes time, and you have to manage the expectations, especially of companies and RTOs. And finally, try to put together all the different policy tools that you can use to support PPI policy. Training, as I said, other programs to synchronize the support to SMEs, test beds, different approaches which are not innovation procurement as such, but may support the deployment of innovation procurement in your region.
Thank you very much, Diego.
Yeah.
Sorry, I showed
no, it's okay.
Here, I hope I didn't cut you while you were long from the end.
That was my final statement. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation and for this, for putting forward why is it that the public procurement for innovation is a useful policy tool, even though I understand it can be quite complex, yes, and the links that exist with smart specialization strategies. I can maybe invite now Marc with us. Because the first question for you, Diego, and you can stay with us on screen, please. You can turn on your camera again.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. The first question will come from Marc, and I will just take 1 second to invite all our participants to not hesitate to type down their questions for Diego, either now or later on. We can take them as we go along. So please, Marc, go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks. So I would reiterate the point that Raluca's just made. Use the chatter feed to send your comments and questions. We'll try and deal with them. But I think Diego's given us a fantastic introduction to the what I see the challenges and quite a realistic take. And I'm glad you mentioned the sort of 18 months time frame that would seem reasonable for implementing your first, let's say, pilot procurement initiative. One of the questions I'd like to share, I think others would perhaps agree with me, is you put all this in place, you've done all the steps, and you've given us the building blocks. What are the barriers that you might find that may cause the policy not to work or to stumble at the last stage of implementation? Have you got any experience of having gone through processes? There's a real, this is the barrier, this is the challenge you really must take into account.
Well, the main barrier is that at least or in many countries, let's say the PPI innovation procurement policy is very much supported by the re-innovation agencies, and that's of course how it should be. But the re-innovation agencies are not major procurers. So as I said, while on the innovation supply measures is quite simple for them, or at least we've been doing that for decades, to create and set these incentives, in this case, they have to bring into these major procurers. So one has normally the funding and let's say the innovation language, and the other hand has the language, but not always also the innovation language, and it's not used to manage this kind of innovation projects. So it is a barrier of one has to get into the procurement world and the other has to get into the innovation world. So barriers has to do mainly with governance, with lack of knowledge. So training, we always say training. I mean, it takes time, and it should take time, because procurement is a very delicate material to work with. So when an innovation agency is providing funds to SMEs or to entrepreneurs, they normally provide dozens of support dozens of projects. In the procurement world, you normally pick one winner who is
narrowing down.
So you have to narrow, and it is more delicate, and so it's a different scenario to what an innovation agency normally is familiar with.
Yeah, I think, Diego, one of the opportunities I thought of when listening to you is the new enabling conditions that have been put in place by DG Regio and the clear focus on addressing barriers to technology diffusion, to take up of good technology by SMEs. For me, is a good window of opportunity for our regional authorities listening today to think, what is the public procurement path, the way to resolve these barriers and remove an obstacle for ensuring the growth of our more innovative companies, but also making sure we are assessing public procurement on a life cycle rather than just the cheapest product that's on the market.
Well, for sure, I mean, any company will always prefer to have the first contract rather than the last grant. You've been working on developing prototypes, but if your market is mainly or partly the public market, what you want is to have your first contract. So this contract really change your life and make a difference, especially if you are an innovative SMEs or a young firm or an entrepreneur. So to be able to give to more European, especially small companies, this opportunity to have their first contract, which is a contract in which you co-develop the solution with the client, which is in this case, that really makes the difference. You just change your life. So yeah, I mean, I hope this in terms of technology diffusion and even new opportunities to young SMEs, that innovation procurement is gaining more attention. Sure.
Kickstart. Okay, well, we'll come back to you, Diego, later in the final panel session. Arnault or Raluca, I don't know if there are any questions from the chatter. If not, we'll move on to the next presentation in Mantas. But Raluca.
Well, there is one question. We received one question from Isabel. I must say I'm sorry, but it's not completely clear. I will try to rephrase it. I think the purpose of the question is Isabel was wondering if PPIs, given that they seem to be some complex, actually reach their objective, and if products are bought after this PPIs, because in her opinion, it's a very complicated process, especially for SMEs. Does that make sense to you, Diego?
Sure. I mean,
okay.
As I said, we are in the procurement world, so it's always easier for those companies who are familiar with that. So if you are a big company with a very big commercial, department who is very much familiar with procurement, public procurement, it will be easier for you. But consider Horizon 2020. It is complex, right? And we have many small companies who get used to let's say the participation rules of FP7 and now Horizon Europe, Horizon 2020 and then Horizon Europe, and they were able to be familiar with that, and they are successful. So again, through training, you can get used to procurement if you are not familiar with that, and you are also able to develop your strategy. That sometimes the strategy could be to join a big company. Of course, maybe you have the innovation capabilities or the fresh ideas, and they have, the commercial departments, and you can create a joint venture. That could be an opportunity. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I think we understood that. If ever there is a follow-up question from Isabel, we will surely take it on board a little bit later. So thank you so much, Diego and Marc.
Welcome.
I will now go to our second speaker for today. And while I introduce Mantas, I will ask him to maybe turn on already. Okay, good. We can already see you, Mantas. So after this more generic introduction from Diego on public procurement for innovation as a policy tool, we will also get more concrete with some examples. And the first one comes from Lithuania, from Mantas. He represents the project IBI, and more specifically the Lithuanian Innovation Center. And he will talk a little bit more about a good practice in the pre-commercial procurement support scheme. The floor is all yours, Mantas. You have 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello to everyone. I'm Mantas Vilys. I do represent the Lithuanian Innovation Center, the oldest innovation support agency here in Lithuania, active in this business for more than 20 years. So we went through different innovation support measures, different ways to support innovation from the public sector point of view. And yeah, I'm here to showcase some of the good practices that we developed together with the European colleagues that I'm going to present. And my practice that I'm going to focus today on is related to the initial stage of innovative public procurement, is the pre-commercial procurement. Procuring the solution that is not yet on the market, tackling the challenges the public sector needs. So this is the framework of my presentation. I start my presentation with presenting my family, the family of highly motivated public institutions that teamed up with the goal to think about the role of the public sector plays in supporting innovation, thinking about how the public procurement could be this driver to support innovation in European regions. So yeah, the institutions that I'm not going to list all the institutions, but I quickly mention the countries. So Latvia, Finland, Romania, Greece, Portugal, and Spain. So that's the countries that teamed up for this joint effort. And then we said that yes, even though the public sector plays already a role, an important role in supporting innovation, we clearly see that we miss some good practices when we talk about the public procurement being a big Pandora box for every public sector, but how to turn this challenge of handling the public procurement in an opportunity in stimulating the innovation. So that was the starting point, and then we clearly thought about the fact that yes, even though the public procurement for innovation is a big opportunity. It's a kind of a win-win situation for the public sector that gets the solution for the challenge that they face, being it logistics, being it the public services, being it some energy-related domains. So on one hand, the public sector gets the solution for the challenge. On the other hand, it's a big, important customer for the user, for the company that develops innovative products and services. This is a kind of a win-win situation, but it does not happen to the level that we would like to. And what are the good practices? What are the missing things in the policies related to this pre-commercial procurement? That was the starting point of this consortium. The consortium that has a catchy name of iBuy and funded through the Interreg Europe program was the starting point. And of course, we looked into the practices. We looked at the things that we have the best in the regions, and we said, what should we do better? How to find the better, more impactful policies to initiate the change and to initiate that the public procurement, pre-commercial and innovative public procurement happens at a higher level than it is now. So with this ambition goal, we started already some time ago. We have a number of activities in doing this joint exercise, working with the policymakers, working with the businesses, trying to find out what is missing and how to support this. And I think we found some answers. We found some good practices that I'm going to present. As I mentioned, pre-commercial procurement as it's a phenomenon was already there. There are some countries, some regions that have some legislation already in place. They have some funds allocated and so on. But as we already spotted, the problem was that the pre-commercial procurement was not happening to the level it could. On one hand, what we can say that the pre-commercial procurement was happening at the individual public procurer level, based on the individual public procurer initiative or within its own budget constraints, and it was case-by-case basis. On the other hand, we saw that through the Europe there was some sort of the national policies built in order to improve these processes, and there was some central agencies, central funding mechanisms that co-financed the pre-commercial procurement. So that was the practice, but again, it was scattered practice, not systematically implemented, and so on. And what we did, and what kind of a good practice that I would like to showcase from Lithuania at the beginning, is the particular funding instrument that we designed in order to support the pre-commercial procurement in Lithuania in a systematic way. And at first, we started from the funding instrument that we found the most relevant and most adequate in overcoming the first barriers, the missing funding element for the pre-commercial procurement to happen systematically at the national level. So we designed a particular mechanism, a particular instrument from the structural funds. So within the Lithuanian operational program, we designed an instrument that is a non-refundable subsidy for the public institutions that would like to engage in the pre-commercial procurement process. And the funding ratio is like up to 85% from structural funds, and 15% is the own contribution of the institution itself. So it means that the institution should allocate some internal resources as well. Nevertheless, the major funding comes from the structural funds. The projects, of course, should be in line within the smart specialization strategy of the country. So it means that, the focus on the priorities set beforehand is important. Nevertheless, the projects are long-term projects initiated by the public institutions, and that identifies a particular challenge that requires the solution, and the solution is not on the market yet. So having all these prerequisites ready, the public institution applies for the funding, gets the initial checkup that this is really the problem and there are no solutions on the market, and the pre-commercial procurement phase process could be started. So the funding is, as I mentioned, could last in the range of almost 3 years, and it could be up to 2 million euros for the particular project. And when we come to the pre-commercial procurement concept as such, so the activities that could be funded through the instrument mainly, of course, at first covers the creation and approval of the concept for innovative solution, products, or process. So what are the concepts? What are the ways to approach the challenge the public institution has? So typically at the first phase, there are a number up to four SMEs or businesses proposing the concept to approach the challenge the company, the public institution has. Then at the second stage, after the initial discussions with the suppliers, it is possible to move into the process of prototype development. So it's not only the concept, how to solve this waste problem or energy distribution challenge or some monitoring within the public sector issues that are needed. So not only the concepts for solving this identified at the second stage, the prototype development kicked in, and it's also not the single one prototype is developed, but it could be a number of prototypes developed by following some of the pre-selected approaches. So you have some options to test within the public sector domain and to check to which extent they are relevant, to which extent they are adequate, to which extent they are resultful for the challenge that was identified. And then, of course, through this instrument, it's possible to move to the third stage of the pre-commercial procurement, where the original, let's say, proposed concepts and prototypes are actually tested on the real life environment, and also even some particular pre-selected, I would say, prototypes are purchased by the public institution for the final implementation. So all these three stages are possible to implement through the measures that we designed here in Lithuania. And additionally, I would like to illustrate this, how does this instrument works with a real life example. So we had one of the cases that were funded through this instrument was from the public institution energy company in Lithuania, electricity company in Lithuania that distributes the energy. So they had a challenge to monitor the particular characteristics of the power lines, especially in the remote locations, especially in the hardly accessible locations. And even though they had this challenge for a while, there were no really cost-efficient solutions on the market. Of course, there are some ways to do it, but they are really not energy and just cost-efficient. So there was the challenge that was identified, and there were like some specific characteristics how the solution or how this challenge is described. After describing the challenge, the company moved to them and applied for the instrument, and within the implementation and with the funding received, they started to develop, links with the possible suppliers in the market that could propose some concepts how this problem could be solved. And after identifying like 2-3 concepts or approaches how the problem could be solved, they moved to the prototype building stage, where the 3 prototypes have been built and checked in the real environment, how this actually works, and is it really solves the challenge of really remote and cost-efficient power line monitoring. So yeah, this process clearly helped from public point of view. I think it's like in the final stage of the implementation now. So what we clearly see that there is a high potential for this challenge to be solved for the public energy company. It instantly results in lower maintenance costs, in lower running costs for power grids. It also increases the quality and maybe even some other properties of the power lines that the company manage. On the other hand, for the companies that are doing the research and development in this domain, it's a really important first client, the energy company in Lithuania, that they get at the end of the day. So having this first client happy, they really have a strong ground to propose this solution for the other energy operators in other countries as well. So this is again a win-win situation that actually happens. and generates an important value for the not only for the Lithuania but also for the international growth of the company.
And this is Raluca, Mantas. Do you hear me?
Having all this said,
okay, we reached
the end also with some recommendations,
right? I'm sorry to interrupt.
We can say that sorry, I hear some.
Yeah, this is Raluca. You cannot see me on the screen, but everybody else does. We reached the end of your presentation, right? Because we also have some questions waiting for you. So please, I leave you maybe one more minute. Thank you.
I'm finishing with the recommendations and conclusions in a sec. So what we said clearly and what we found through this good practice is that the role of the government to support innovation through public procurement could be even higher than it is now, and the public sector should not be afraid to experiment and to improve the measures and policies and the practices and the instruments that tackle the innovative public procurement. And what we found an important message to send, that a part of the funding, the necessary funds for the pre-commercial public procurement, it is also really important to have someone facilitating the process. So advisory services or someone that can facilitate the dialogue between the businesses that could be engaged in public procurement, innovative public procurement, and the public sector that needs to identify the challenge and to clarify what does it mean, this challenge, how to tackle this challenge, what is it really a problem, and so on. So there should be someone, institution, or I don't know, some services available in a country that facilitates the dialogue between these two parties for the benefit of the innovative public procurement. On this bombshell, I finish my presentation. I'm looking forward to the questions and remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mantas. And I'm sorry for having interrupted a little bit just earlier. It's just that I see people are eager also with the questions. So this is why I did it. Maybe now, Marc, would you like to start with the first question, or should we already take the ones from the audience?
Well, I'll be very quick, Mantas. Thanks for that. And I'm glad you ended up with those recommendations, because one of the key messages I think you've highlighted there is this need for supporting the policymakers in their capacity building, their knowledge and approach to this. So I think that's an important message. It takes time to change culture, to change years of public procurement in the old style. One question for you: how does a challenge process emerge? You know, who sets that process in motion? Is it from the national, downward, saying you should do this, or is it coming from a bottom-up perspective?
I would say that there are no clear one-way street here. I mean, on one hand, I see a number of cases where the driver or initiator of the process was the public sector, with a really tremendous challenge that they had in mind, and they could not resolve this, and it was, energy or inefficient challenge that they are facing. And that was the starting point. They said, yeah, we have to do something about that. Is there anyone that can help us with it? So top-down kind of approach. On the other hand, I see a number of cases where the really ingenious SMEs, even small-scale entrepreneurs, said, guys, we have the solution. We might build a solution that could help to overcome this and that. So it was totally bottom-up. Cases that we also monitored, and they were really also resultful and successful, I would say, that sometimes the public sector is not even aware about the things that are possible. So yeah, both things happen simultaneously. In some cases, there is no golden rule that it's only top down or bottom up. In some cases, is like from one direction or from another. But the most important thing that there should be some sort of dialogue or like a platform open to initiate one way or another way connections or communication through the between these two business and the public sector actors, I would say.
Okay. Well, one question which I'll ask now, but you can answer later in the panel, is that if we listen to Diego about the S3 prioritization process, I think one of the questions that would be interesting for us to hear from you is, how does the cross-sector collaboration bring answers into this public procurement challenge? Because, you know, we saw your example of the energy with the drone technology in health, I imagine. So let's just park that question for later, and we'll just think of how can we get the S3 cross-sectoral collaboration to help identify challenges. So, Raluca, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Marc. Mantas, we received 2 questions for you, and they came from Jean-Patrick and from Alexandre. They are both related to the funding mentioned. You mentioned the funding by the ECF. I'll try to combine the 2 questions. Basically, they would like to know if there will be a follow-up from the ECF, and under which ECF objective can the funding be justified?
The follow-up is foreseen. I mean, yeah, it's in the development stage and so on. So as always, the priorities, the measures, and so on, they are in constant development. But I believe because of the success and the fuzz that the instrument caused, I think the follow-up is inevitable. And so on the other hand, when it comes to the operational program and the priorities, it is justifiable and really easily under the priority number 1, innovation, as the mean to support innovation, because, you know, the subject or the object of the public procurement is the R&D activities. So definitely this is justifiable under the priority number 1.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope this answered the questions that we received from the 2 people that asked them. If ever you need more details, don't hesitate to write to us in the chat. Thank you very much, Mantas, for your presentation. We will see you again for the panel discussion a little bit later. It's time for us now to go to our third, last but not least speaker, Iñaki from the Basque country. Hello, Iñaki. I will read out the organization that you represent, because if not, I'm afraid I will make a mistake. So you are the Director of Organisational and Managerial Innovation of the Basque Foundation for Health Innovation and Research. So you will present a case study, a specific good practice on public procurement for innovation in the health sector. The floor is all yours, Iñaki.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation and also for the complicated name that I was also quite difficult to also to remember. So thanks for that, and thanks also for giving us the chance to make this presentation on behalf of the Basque Foundation for Health Innovation and Research, also on the Basque Health System that we represent. Regarding the institutional context, we need to say that we are one of the 17 regions in Spain. The Basque country is 2.2 million population with 2 official languages, and that is Spanish and Basque. And well, full autonomy, I would say, with own government, fiscal and financial autonomy. So that means that we are as independent as we could be inside Europe. And also we have a sport-oriented economy. That means that 30% of the GDP is industry derived. On the other side, the health in the Basque country, it is based on the Basque Ministry for Health. That is also in connection with the Spanish Ministry for Health, but we are fully autonomous in terms of financing and the structure in the system. And on the other side, the main provider of services, it is the Basque Health Service. That is I would say that is one of the biggest industries in the Basque country, because nowadays Osakidetza, that is the Basque Health Service, that deals with more than 90% of the provision, has around 27,000 employees, in which 70% of them, they are women. On the other side, the Basque Health Service, it is divided in 13 integrated health organizations, in which they are coordinated specialized services and primary care services. All of them, they are public, and they are coordinated by the same person. So it is the manager of each of the integrated health organizations deals with specialized care, so hospitals, and also primary or community care. And who we are, the Basque Foundation for Health Innovation and Research, it is a foundation of the public sector created by the Department of Health in 2002. And its mission, it is to promote innovation and research in the Basque Health System and to constitute a framework for cooperation between sectors and to contribute to the generation of health and wealth. Having that in mind, we started collaborating in a European project that is an Interreg funding project that is called TITAN, that is the Network for Technology and Innovation Translation in Aging. The aim was improving the quality and performance of the regional healthcare systems. There are 7 represented in TITAN consortium in relation with the active healthy aging. And it is to exchange, benchmark, and implement and foster the design, uptaking, and use of innovative technology-based products and solutions. There are 3 main thematic areas. So it is uptake innovative health products, services through PCPs and PPIs. So it is the pre-commercial procurement and procurement of innovation, and also public procurement of innovation to promote the ecosystem of innovation. And the third one, it is citizen awareness of technology and improve quality of life. Also, that is linked with the strategy on smart intelligence in the Basque country, in Euskadi, that includes the priority of bioscience, health, and the research and innovation for health strategy 2020 that is finished this year. On public procurement of innovation strategic initiatives, they are included there. So there are 3 main areas in which the Basque country aims to be specialized. One of those, it is biosciences health. So first of all, when we started doing things around public procurement of innovation and pre-commercial procurement, one of the things that we learned which is the framework that you are going to use. In this case, we try to figure out what innovation was, and in the case of health, we try to follow WHO innovation group. In this case, they said that the innovation was to develop and deliver new or improve health policies, systems, and products and technologies and services and delivery methods that improve people's health. So I think it is quite important to know the framework, because it is important also to know that not all the new technologies are in reality innovative, and that is also something, and a message that should be sent also to innovators. And also another thing that they establish is that they need to respond to unmet needs by employing new ways of thinking and working with a special focus on the needs of vulnerable populations. And health innovation adds value, and that is important also, the concept of value in the form of improved efficiency, effectiveness, quality, safety, and or affordability. In this sense, we have a landscape in the Basque country in which we have 2 programs that are called BIOSASUN, and the other one, it is InnoSasun. BIOSASUN means opportunities to companies. So that means that we identified health needs, so ideas. They are structured by the Basque Foundation for Health, Innovation and Research, and they could be tackled into, and they could be figured out into innovative solutions or technologies, but that links health needs of the reality in the system that we have. So that means the landscape of the Basque health system with innovators in which they are represented through the Basque health cluster. On the other side, we also provide opportunities. So the main idea of the BIOSASUN would be much more pre-commercial procurement. So that will be the idea. And we have another program that is InnoSasun, that is Public Procurement of Innovation. Innovation, it is InnoSasun, means that we give opportunities to those innovators in the Basque country and those coming from overseas to test their products, so the technologies that they are producing, if they could provide value to our system through a validation process. So it is the needs of companies and other related business agents in terms of validating their products in real world settings. So that will be public procurement of innovation. On that basis, we also had another thing that is important and is linked to the terminology that we are using here. So it is the framework of innovation, and also what values are. And we had since more than 25 years ago. It was created the OSTEBA, that is the Basque Service for Health Technology Assessment, and they give us the framework in which we validate the technologies, or we test the ideas in terms of saying if they are innovative or not. On that basis, the other thing that that you need to perform when you are trying to establish a system in it is on public procurement of innovation or pre-commercial procurement, it is defining the value and the values. First of all, it needs to be multidimensional, and it requires interaction. It also requires the perspective. It is perspective dependent and also context dependent. So that means that it requires bearing in mind the characteristics of the society, the questions, so the health needs that they have, and the cultural values and the priorities. So in terms of determining if something it is innovative and it will be useful for determining context, you need to define and you need to put clear to innovators which the value framework that you have is, and that includes obviously things that we have always heard, and in the case of the health sector, it is transcendental: safety and efficacy, but also cost, and those are things that and we have heard around many frameworks, including cost effectiveness ratios and so on. But also it is a matter of how the system it is organized, what the ethics are, which the legal framework is, and also which are the cultural aspects. And another thing that has been added in these recent times, it is environmental concerns around the production of the technology, its transport, and how it is used or reused, if it is recyclable or not, how the spare pieces are used, and so on. So the value and the values that you have are transcendental also in defining what something could be innovative or not. And on that basis, our practice has been to create a matrix for procurement that has, in principle, two main dimensions. But nowadays we are refining and we are trying to find perhaps it will be a three-dimensional matrix. But up to now we are using a two-dimensional matrix that includes two things. And those are related to uncertainty. On the one side, we use evidence uncertainty. So we use information and its quality, and that is related to the possible value of the technology in terms of the quality of the information that it could provide. And on the other side, we use financial or budget uncertainty. So it is budget impact and cost per patient. And that is used in terms of providing some kind of matrix. On that basis, we create the matrix that you can see here, in which we use a two-dimensional matrix of low and high financial or budget uncertainty, or low and high evidence uncertainty. In those cases in which the evidence uncertainty, so it is the quality of the information that we have, and the cost are low, we promote in the Basque Health Service and the Basque Health system traditional procurement. In terms of those cases in which the evidence uncertainty is low, but the possible costs to the system are high, we negotiate with the Basque Health Service one of the things that have been said. So it is at the population level, a fixed price per patient, and at the patient level, an expenditure cap. In those cases in which the evidence uncertainty it is high, but the cost uncertainty or the financial uncertainty is low, what we promote, especially with innovators, is what we have called coverage with evidence development. In those cases in which there is low, intermediate uncertainty, we promote just with research. So we promote traditional procurement, but just with research. So we need more information in terms of having insights of what to do. And in those cases in which the uncertainty is high, what we say and what we I would say negotiate with innovators and companies, it is that we are going to introduce that technology just under research premises. And in those cases in which the evidence is high and the financial or budget uncertainty also it is, also the evidence uncertainty is high and the financial and budget uncertainty is high, but we are still interested in the technology, what we promoted is what we say conditional treatment continuation, or other type of managed entry agreements in which we negotiate with the companies, with the innovators, with the small and medium enterprises on how it is going to be introduced. On that basis, which are the lessons that we have learned in our case?
You will finish soon, right, Iñaki?
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
So it is the recommendations that we can share with you. It is that any process of public procurement of innovation, at least in the healthcare sector, needs to have the stakeholders' involvement of innovators, of professionals that they know the health needs of the system, of the patients, that they determine the outcomes that they wanted to, so the values of those technologies in reality. So we use also patient-reported outcomes and patient-reported expectancies. Also, the managers that they will be in need to procure the technologies, and also policymakers that they need to also to structure the system. Also, you need to define the dimensions of value, and that needs to be also shared with the stakeholders, and to establish a public procurement matrix in which the values around, in our case, they have been around uncertainty. They have been used in terms of in which cases we are going to use traditional procurement, and in which cases we are going to use other type of procurement processes. And finally, this structure the process. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iñaki. I was about to say Marc, please, but you are already there. So please go ahead with your question, because for the time being, there's nothing specifically from the audience. Marc, please.
Okay. Well, you've trained me well, Raluca. I pressed the button just before you start. So thanks a lot, Iñaki. That's a really interesting presentation. I think you probably made a number of the participants quite jealous because of the rich ecosystem that you have. You seem to have the actors in all parts of the value chain necessary to progress your public procurement agenda. But one question that came to mind when listening to you, when you started to talk about the different context factors, I was wondering whether our dear friend COVID-19 has had any impact on this public procurement and innovation dimension. We've seen the European Commission launching calls in emergency mode, and but how have you seen that impacting your public procurement processes at the regional level with COVID?
Well, it has been complicated, especially, and that's why I was saying that we are trying to refine our matrix, especially from the side of the provider. So one of the main problems that we have faced, it is the provision, especially the companies are coming from overseas in most of the cases. And the main providers of technologies are producing, especially in Far East. So from that side, one of the lessons that we have learned with COVID-19 it is that perhaps we need to promote much more industries and enterprises that are based in Europe. And that is part of the lessons that we have learned. And also the providers of technologies are crucial in terms of also determining the factor of uncertainty of if the technology is going to be in the market or not. So I think the logistics and those are lessons that we have learned. The logistics and also the provision of technologies are also crucial. So probably the matrix will be in need to be refined a little bit. And on the other side, it has been in reality, COVID-19 has been an opportunity also in our case, because we have been more engaged with innovators than ever. And in fact, we have promoted in our foundation more than 100 research projects, and some of them, they are innovative solutions that they were in reality needs of the system. So we have seen that obviously it has been a crisis, but on the other side, as Chinese, they were saying it is also crisis is an opportunity, and in a case, it has been that.
No, I think it's a very good response, and we are indeed hearing a lot about this sort of economic sovereignty at a European level. And we don't want every region in Europe to stockpile 100 million masks, but we need Europe to be ready with the best people, with the best technologies, and not rely on it being drip fed from another country. So that's good. Okay, well, we're going to come to the last session now, and this is where I think we're going to invite all our panelists to come back online, and my colleague Arnault. And while we're doing that, I think we have a little poll question, Raluca, we want to share with everybody.
Yes, everybody can see it now on the screen. So the question is, what are the most important barriers for public procurement in your region? and you are all voting at the moment. The options are lack of capability, lack of expertise and incentives, risk aversion, inadequate communication between procurers and suppliers, or prescriptive and bothersome process. I think we can now close the poll, and then we can indeed kickstart the panel discussion. In the upcoming 15 minutes, you will see all our speakers on screen. So now we can see the results. I will maybe let you, Marc, comment on that.
Yeah, I think listening to the three presentations and also Arnault giving us some of the contextual issues about public procurement has given us the tools now to maybe measure where individually you rest in this process. And I think, well, we've got the first one, almost 50%, 48% as it stands, lack of expertise and incentives. I think those are two very distinct issues. The incentives for those, maybe we heard from the SMEs needed to be encouraged to put forward some innovative solutions, but also clearly, I think in all three presentations, the need for expertise to organize and set up the process, to put it into your policy context, and to put it into your patient care, in the case of Iñaki, looking at the health sector. Risk aversion, that doesn't surprise us, because I think we are in an area where regulations for public procurement are stringent. We've all seen how major public tendering processes, an example, the bicycles of Paris were run perfectly well for a number of years, and when the municipality decided to change the funding model, the whole delivery, then there was a failure. But the public stayed firm with this new supplier, and it's been developed. But that must have put a lot of people off. So risk aversion, and well, hopefully the number one on the list there, capability, lack of capability. This webinar will give you some of those building stones for moving forward in putting in place a public procurement policy in your regions or in your agencies. So Arnault, I think you're going to join us now, and if there are no questions from the audience.
That for the time being, but I would also like to invite Diego to join the panel discussion. Okay, now I let you start the panel discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like to come back to one of my questions. We've heard a lot about the health sector, and in the the experience we've had with Interreg Europe, we brought together 6 or 7 partnerships because they were all looking at the health sector. But the question to all three of you, are there other sectors that are, let's say, as rich a field of opportunities for public procurement that you would recommend that other regions look at as a priority for public procurement, innovative public procurement, other sectors? And who wants to suggest something?
I think that depends on the priority of your region. So in the case of the Basque Country, we have concentrated in 3 areas of smart specialization. So as I've described, one was health. Perhaps it is one of the most complicated ones, but the other ones were transport and energy. And in this case, we have quite a good experience in the case of energy, not so in the case of transport and logistics. But at least in the area of energy, with 2 big companies being concentrated or at least established in the Basque area, that is Ibarluzea, that is an electric company, and on the other side it is Repsol, that they have also a petrol area that has a big refinery near Bilbao. So those are the main areas in which perhaps we have had experience, and those are opportunities. But I think that refers to the priorities that you as a region have.
If I may, I would say that you have to keep in mind that well, healthcare sector is on the one hand it is a major procurer, but on the other it is a sector, public sector that has by itself a research capability. So you do have foundations like the one of Iñaki, people like Iñaki, which are not so common. You don't find people like this so often in sectors like, say, education. Be in education, a very big market, a very big investor, but they don't have such they are not used to procure technology, and they don't have these research capabilities. So that explains to some extent why the healthcare sector is so successful in innovation procurement. From our experience, I would say that the local authorities, city halls are becoming more and more active in innovation procurement. We are seeing that in Spain and in other countries. And I mean, we are running, for example, right now a very big project in Santiago de Compostela. So these smart city projects goes very, very well in hand with innovation procurement. Most of the things they procure are not innovation, but some of them are. Local services like maintenance, communications, transport, all that is also very, very much in line with an innovation procurement project could look like, right?
Yeah.
So
Mantas, well, Mantas, what's your experience?
Yeah, I do have two kind of views on this. On one hand, it's rather easy to see where the big potential is where the biggest, budgets are. I mean, when there are, the biggest procurement cases happening now. So of course, healthcare, big industry, not industry, but big sector as such. I mean, big budgets and so on. You look to the energy sector as well. But then I touch upon another view a bit that goes back to the issue that was already mentioned, the cross-sectoral kind of element. So on one hand, the public sector-wise, maybe it's not tremendous, maybe not the biggest sector from the public intervention point of view, but nevertheless, there are so many opportunities when you link this sector with, specific technology domains. I mean, I would be really relevant now with the example of education and ICT. Yeah. Nowadays, with this especially COVID situation and so on, we clearly, discovered how impactful different ICT technologies are for education. And this, as domain from the public spending point of view, education is also an important sector as such. And there definitely could be a big potential for many innovations to happen when we connect education needs with the ICT technology and other related domains that could help to overcome these challenges in education, in virtual environments, in different educational technologies as such. So definitely there are, on one hand, budgetary concept where you look where the biggest budgets and how you can save some costs, be more efficient and so on. On the other hand, you see where are the complementarities of the technologies to be applied in the domains that maybe never been applied before. So this is where the big opportunities lie.
I think another big budget area for all public sector organizations is in public construction and infrastructure. And I think it's they're not always seen as key sectors or specialization domains, but I think smarter, in buildings are a way of hitting some of the other policy priorities in regions, whether it's to do with the ecological transition, the digital transition. I'm not going to bore you with the new Green Deal today. I think there are areas where a lot of money being spent by the public sector in buildings, and maybe more innovative public procurement could help with the technology dimensions for this, whole ecology and energy transition.
Yep.
Yes, that's right. The thing is that innovation procurement always, is more easy when you can pilot, meaning that, for example, in what we were mentioning in the education or in medtech, you can pilot a solution. But in a big infrastructure project, that's always not so easy. Of course, you can focus on a particular building and on an energy solution, a zero energy building. That's okay. But if you are thinking on a very big infrastructure, it is not so easy to find the product. But the point is that we should also be able to consider that not the whole project has to be innovative, or the whole project has to be, but just a specific part, and that would be the way to approach infrastructure, just considering small, sub or pilot projects within a very big infrastructure investment.
One of the other questions I know that I think Mantas, you picked it up quite clearly, is in the funding mechanisms that you can put in place for stimulating the process and then actually procuring, because I think it's two different steps. Obviously, we're talking about regional policies. You gave the example, Mantas, of national monies. What are the sort of first steps that the regions could think of regarding funding some of these initiatives? To, if you're starting from zero, where can you find funding resources?
The traditional source of funding is structural funds that every region typically has, and then some. I think now when there is like a new process of renewing the smart specialization strategies, rethinking the investment priorities, and what I clearly see from the discussions with the policymakers themselves, they say, but what are the better ways to support innovation? Maybe the things that we did, yeah, they are good, they are impactful, but what's next? I mean, what should we do next? What are the more impactful strategies? What is missing, and so on? And then it's a good chance to showcase how the innovative public procurement could be the answer to a number of the issues that the policymakers had, on the novelty of the instruments, on the catalyst kind of function that it could play. So it's clearly the, structural funds and programming the investments. In other cases, it could be also the regional funding. You don't need much. I mean, I say that the funding instrument or the funding focus, it's really important at the initial stages of the concept adoption. I mean, innovative public procurement is, I would say, for the many of the policymakers, is a new concept. I mean, yes, for majority of the policymakers, public procurement, general public procurement, is already a challenge. And then we say, guys, let's go beyond this and let's even procure something that is not even on the market or is really novel. It says, oh my God, Mantas, I cannot procure regular things without any legal challenges that I face. And you are proposing to buy something? No, I cannot risk the budget of the municipality with this one. So then the additional kind of resources for trying this instrument helps a lot, because then it takes the risk of losing the standard functions of the municipality or the public institution as such. So there are the things that are in place guaranteed, and then you have a playground, as I call it. You have the playground with additional resources to test the new concepts and to show that this practice is feasible and possible. Later on, the most of the regular public, let's say, public procurement funds could be used for this. But to try it, to have the chance to experiment, it's not that common in public sector. And for that, you need some extra or additional or on a top funding that gives you this chance. Later on, when the practice gets into the shoes of every policymaker, everyone is aware what they can get out of it. They could play with the regular, public resources that they have in their hand.
Yeah. On the other side,
Diego, did you want to add something?
Yeah.
I would just highlight
Iñaki,
that.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was to say that another thing it is that normally the budgets are constrained. So that means that you need also to find a way to accommodate part of the budget to procurement, to new solutions or innovative solutions. And on that basis, the best way it is to try to figure out what the technologies that you are already procuring are producing in terms of value. And on that side, it is being back to the companies and saying, well, we are obtaining less value that we are supposed to. So that means that you can also accommodate the budget that you have, and even reduce the cost of some of the technologies, and give some spare money to those innovative solutions. We started a program that was related to identifying obsolete technologies. So or technologies that procure low value for the cost that they had. So in this sense, we were also having a conversation with companies in terms of, well, on the one side, it is what the promises that you had around your technology, and in reality, the value that you are providing to our system. So on that basis, the costs are not the good value for money. So it is renegotiating also the cost in terms of having some innovative solutions also to find money for new technologies or innovative technology.
Yeah. Sorry, Diego, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just to when we're discussing the role of structural funds in innovation procurement, and of course that's a very useful resource, I would suggest not just to focus on thematic objective 1 or political objective 1, meaning R&D, because in fact, innovation procurement is procurement. So you can perform procurement with any investment funds. And if you use, for example, thematic objective 2, which is ICT, well, it is a different approach, and you can try to bring new, investment agencies in this conversation, saying, okay, let's try to approach your project. And if once we have conducted the market consultations, we see that what you want to procure is already on the market, okay, you can keep on using your structural funds, which are not R&D, to procure something which is on the market. But if we find that your challenge is not met by the market, then we can keep on using those funds and perform an innovation procurement. So it's more flexible, but it may end up not being innovation procurement, but it's more flexible, and you bring on new people who is not used to manage R&D funds, which are more, well, a different animal, right?
Okay. Well, I can see Raluca's come on, but Arnaud, do you have any other questions you want to share with our panel?
Yes,
No, it's a very interesting discussion, but we're lacking some time.
Yeah, this is why I showed up. Everybody knows now why do I show up from time to time. But no, we can have maybe a few conclusion words, and then we can officially say goodbye to everybody. Anyways, thank you so much, all the attendees, for having stayed with us so far. It will not be more than 5 minutes up until the end. So please go ahead, Arnaud.
Yeah, very short conclusion. So we can see that public procurement is really central to respond to regional and societal challenges. And today, with the COVID-19 emergency that is happening in Europe, but also around the world, and the European Commission that has responded very well to this COVID-19 and public procurement with a new guidance for public buyers. I mean, it really gives more flexibility, and it offers like many opportunities for regions to really experiment with public procurement and respond to this emergency.
I would just add one thing. I think the opportunity for the smart specialization authorities, which are regional, currently working on updating their S3, can think about these horizontal measures and address some of the priority sectors. And the enabling conditions have to be tackled. And I think one of these enabling conditions is very clearly addressed by innovative public procurement, whether it's through the current barriers to technology diffusion, the barriers for growing your SMEs to make them go beyond the 1 to 10 employees to 50 plus. So it's a real opportunity for introducing new innovative methods of working with your SMEs and generating some real value for supporting the smart specialization domains that you want to implement. So the timing is right, and as Arnaud said, some more flexibility in funding tools. So let's get on. And if you had the nice ecosystem that we find in the Basque country, then you've got all the ingredients, the agencies, the clusters, public procurement expertise, and the smart specialization strategy. So align these bricks, and then you put Diego's model in place, and then you put a bit of funding, as Mantas said. So let's sort it. And Raluca, over to you.
Yeah, no, I see with this webinar we outlined the how the success part pattern should look like. So it seems like it should be easy. I'm sure it's much more complex in reality, but
Yeah,
okay, 3 things to say for me at the end. I started with 3 things. I end with the magical number of 3. First of all, thank you so much for being with us today, having watched this webinar up until the end. Thank you so much to our guest speakers, Diego, Mantas, and Iñaki. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. Of course, thank you, Marc and Arnault, equally, for having put together this webinar. This was the first, so I wanted to thank everybody. Second, with the help of my colleague Lotte, you will soon see on the screen 2 short slides. The first one is to remind you that we already mentioned that this good practices exists on the Interreg Europe website. You heard today 2 good practices coming from there, the one presented by Mantas and Iñaki, but online that there are so much more to discover. So don't hesitate to have a look. And especially in the COVID-19 crisis that we are all going through, we would be very much eager to welcome even more solutions from which people around Europe can take inspiration. So don't hesitate to submit your own if you are the owner of something that could be useful in this particular context. And the final thing, and also very important, would be we have 3 more webinars coming up in the upcoming 2 weeks. Tomorrow we have a webinar on building resilient economies, extremely useful in this period. Next week, on the 25th of June, we have a webinar that can be seen as a follow-up to today's webinar, when we will talk about green public procurement. So don't hesitate to register to that one as well. And on the 30th June, we have a webinar on a completely different subject, but maybe you know people that might be interested, and we will talk about cycling tourism. On that note, I would like to thank you again for your participation. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I hope I'll have the pleasure to see you again in one of our webinars. Goodbye.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.